Inquiry is seeking answer to questions, investigating issues, and gathering information to help us draw conclusions. It enables us to get beyond our first impressions, feelings, preconceived notions, and personal preferences. There are two basic kinds of inquiry: inquiry into facts and inquiry into opinions. Opinions, remember, can be informed or uninformed. Except in case where the purpose of our inquiry demands that both varieties of opinion be gathered, we should be more interested in informed opinion. Often we will need to inquire into both facts and opinions. Inquiry is seeking answer to questions, investigating issues, and gathering information to help us draw conclusions. It enables us to get beyond our first impressions, feelings, preconceived notions, and personal preference. There are two basic kinds of inquiry: inquiry into facts and inquiry into opinions. Opinions, remember, can be informed or uninformed, except in cases where the purpose of our inquiry demands that both varieties of opinion be gathered. We should be more interested in informed opinion. Often we will need to inquire into both facts and opinions. However resistant to resolution a question may be, though inquiry is still useful, even if it yields no more than the untestable opinion of experts. Those opinions are more valuable than the casual speculation of the uninformed. So we should be intimidated by difficult issues. We should merely be realistic about how complete and final our answers are likely to be. 你搞吧，是吧？你搞吧。How resistant to resolution a question may be, though inquiry is still useful, even if it yields no more than the untestable opinion of experts. Those opinions are more valuable than the casual speculations of the uninformed, so we shouldn't be intimidated by difficult issues. We should merely be realistic about how complete and final our answers are likely to be. Keeping focused, even books needn't to be waded through page by page to find something useful. In mere seconds, you can turn to the index, usually at the end, and look for the several headings your issues might be found under. Then turn to the appropriate pages and read only those pages. If the book has no index, you can turn to the table of contents, read the chapter title, decide which chapter seems most relevant, and then scan them. Even books needn't be waded through page by page to find something useful. In mere seconds, you can turn to the index, usually at the end, and look for the several headings your issue might be found under. Then turn to the appropriate pages and read only those pages. If the book has no index, you can turn to the table of contents, read the chapter title, decide which chapters seem most relevant, and then scan them. Efficiency can be more difficult to achieve in interesting searches because distractions often are more frequent and tempting. Make a special effort to discipline your interest searches, focusing your attention on relevant material only and resisting the temptation to wander. Efficient can be more difficult to achieve in interesting searches because distractions often are more frequent and tempting. Make a special effort to discipline your internet searches, focusing your attention on the relevant material only and resisting the temptation to wander. Managing lengthy material. 1. After reading the article or book, go back and identify the key assertion. 2. Identify the author's conclusion. 3. Notice any qualifying words. Used in the key assertions or the conclusions. Know the amount, kinds, and sources of evidence used to support the assertion. Notice the conditions the author includes. Notice the conditions the author includes. Inquiry is seeking answers to questions, investigating issues, and gathering information to help us draw conclusions. It enables us to get beyond our first impressions, feelings, preconceived notions, and personal preferences. There are two basic kinds of inquiry: inquiry into facts and inquiry into opinions. Opinions, remember, can be informed or uninformed, except in cases where the purpose of our inquiry demands that both varieties of opinion be gathered. We should be more interested in informed opinion. Often we will need to inquire into both facts and opinions. However resistant to resolution a question may be, though inquiry is still useful, even if it yields no more than the untestable opinions of experts. Those opinions are more valuable than the casual speculations of the uninformed, so we don't be intimidated by difficult issues. We should merely be realistic about how complete and finally our answers are likely to be. Keeping focused, even books needed to be waded through page by page to find something useful. In mere seconds, you can turn to the index and look for the several headings your issue might be found under. Then turn to the appropriate pages and read only those pages. If the book has no index, you can turn to the table of the contents, read the chapter titles, decide which chapters seem most relevant, and then scan them. Efficiency can be more difficult to achieve in internet searches because distractions often are more frequent and tempting. Making a special effort to discipline your internet searches, focusing your attention to relevant material only and resisting the temptation to wander. Managing lengthy material. 1. After reading the articles or book, go back and identify the key assertion. 2. Identify the author's conclusion. 3. Notice any qualifying words used in the key assertions or the conclusion. 4. Note the amount, kinds, and sources of evidence used to support the assertions. 5. Notice the conditions the author includes. Judgments are conclusions arrived at through examination of evidence and careful reasoning. They are the product of thinking. Unlike feeling, judgments are not spontaneously and unconscious. They may, of course, contain elements of the spontaneous, such as intuition, but like other data, these elements have first been weighed and evaluated. The fact that judgments are products of evaluation and reasoning does not guarantee their worth. They are foolish as well as wise judgments, superficial as well as penetrating ones. A judgment can easily reflect misconceptions about truth, knowledge, and opinion. Judgments are conclusions arrived at through examination of evidence and careful reasoning. They are the products of thinking. Unlike feelings, judgments are not spontaneous and unconscious. They may, of course, contain elements of the spontaneous, such as intuition, but like other data, these elements have first been weighed and evaluated. The fact that judgments are products of evaluation and reasoning does not guarantee their worth. They are foolish as well as wise judgment, superficial as well as penetrating ones. A judgment can easily reflect misconception about truth, knowledge, and opinion. As the examples demonstrate, taking time to ask appropriate questions has several benefits. First, it prevents you from judging hastily on the basis of first impression. Second, it allows you to evaluate each part of the argument individually rather than settling for an overall evaluation, and thus to identify both strengths and weaknesses. Finally, taking the time to ask appropriate questions often provides a structure around which to arrange your thoughts, making important distinctions. The examples demonstrate taking time to ask appropriate questions has several benefits. First, it prevents you from judging hastily on the basis of first impressions. Second, it allows you to evaluate each part of the argument individually rather than setting for an overall evaluation, and thus to identify both strength and weakness. Finally, taking the time to ask appropriate questions often provides a structure around which to arrange your thoughts, making important distinctions. 1. Between the person and the idea. 2. Between what is said and how it is said. 3. Between why people think as they do and whether what they think is correct. 4. Between the individual and the group of class. 5. Between matters of performance preference and matters of judgment. 6. Between familiarity and consensus, expressing judgments. 1. Strive for a balanced view. 2. Deal with probability. 3. Make your subject appropriate. Specify. 5. Make your predict exact. 5. Include all appropriate qualifications. 6. Avoid exaggeration. Expressing judgments. 1. Strive for a balanced view. 2. Deal with probability. 3. Make your subject appropriate, specific. 4. Make your predict exact. 5. Include all appropriate qualification. 6. Avoid exaggeration. The critical thinking strategy presented in this chapter and the 4 preceding chapters may be summarized as follows. 1. Know yourself and remain mindful of the ways in which your habits of mind undermine your treatment of issues. 1. Know yourself and remain mindful of the ways in which your habits of mind undermine your treatment of issues. 2. Be observant and reflect on what you see and hear. When you identify an issue, clarify it by listening its aspect and raising probing questions about each. 3. When you identify an issue, clarifying it by listening its aspects and raising probing questions about each. 4. Conduct a thorough inquiry, obtain all relevant facts and informed options. Conduct a thorough inquiry, obtain all relevant facts and inform opinions. Evaluate your findings and then form and express your judgment. Know yourself and remain mindful of the ways in which your habits of mind undermine your treatment of issues. 2. Be observant and reflect on what you see and hear. 3. When you identify an issue, clarify it by listing its aspects and raising probing questions about each. 4. Conduct a thorough inquiry, obtain all relevant facts and informed opinions. 5. Evaluate your findings and then form and express your judgment. Judgments are conclusions arrived at through examination of evidence and careful reasoning. They are the products of thinking. Judgments are conclusions arrived at through examination of evidence and careful reasoning. They are the products of thinking. They are the products of thinking. Unlike feelings, judgments are not spontaneous and unconscious. They may, of course, contain elements of the spontaneous, such as intuition, but like other data, these elements have first been weighed and evaluated. The fact that judgments are products of evaluation and reasoning does not guarantee their worth. They are foolish as well as wise judgments, superficial as well as penetrating ones. A judgment can easily reflect misconceptions about truth, knowledge, and opinion. As the example demonstrates, taking time to ask appropriate questions has several benefits. First, it prevents you from judging hastily on the basis of first impressions. Second, it allows you to evaluate each part of the argument individually rather than settling for an overall evaluation and thus to identify both strengths and weaknesses. Finally, taking the time to ask appropriate questions often provides a structure around which to arrange your thoughts, making important distinctions: 1. Between the person and the idea; 2. Between what is said and how it's said; 3. Between why people think as they do and whether what they think is correct; 4. Between the individual and the group or class; 5. Between matters of preference and matters of judgments; 6. Between familiarity and correctness, expressing judgments. 1. Strive for a balanced view. 2. Deal with probability. 3. Make your subject appropriately specific. 4. Make your predicted exact. 5. Include all appropriate qualifications. 6. Avoid exaggerations. The critical thinking strategy presented in this chapter and 4 preceding chapters may be summarized as follows. 1. Knowing yourself and remain mindful of the ways in which your habits of mind undermine your treatment of issues. 2. Be observant and reflect on what you see and hear. 3. When you identify an issue, clarify it by listening its aspects and raising probing questions about each. 4. Conduct a thorough inquiry, obtain all relevant facts and informed opinion. 5. Evaluate your finding and then form and express your judgment.